Good morning. For those of you that I've not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Eric Mitchell. I am the founder of Fifth Ocean Consulting, and I wanted to just thank Dan and Carrie and Nalini and Emily for the opportunity to facilitate. I will tell you plainly, I really wanted this gig because I found it to be one of the most interesting opportunities that had come my way in a long time, and so I am so excited to be a part of this. In our pre-meeting this morning, I mentioned how energized I was by the poster session, and that I actually didn't recall a time in my professional career that I had not only stayed through an entire poster session, but actually stayed an additional hour. So I was very, very impressed, energized, and excited. So it is a privilege to be with you today. So I'm going to spend some time talking about how we're going to be using our time today and tomorrow. And I'd actually like to start just by going through a couple of expectations and guidelines. And perhaps, Brittany, are you in a place where you can see those and maybe read those to the group? Okay. Do you mind? Sure, come on. Yeah. Can you see those all right? Oh,
all right, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so, have you? Hello, California. No. No, and not hello, California. We'll just do this and hopefully not hit you. Okay, so expectations and guidelines. We're going to move at a quick pace these next couple days, so hold on to your hats. We won't reach many conclusions today, but we're going to be inspired.
Well, and we will get to some tangible, concrete action steps tomorrow. So,
Okay.
just to let you know.
Okay, tomorrow. We'll focus on the most important things first. All ideas and questions are welcome, so don't be afraid. Everyone's voice is important. How about that? So is being flexible with microphones. We'll try to stay out of the weeds whenever possible. Trust the wisdom of the group. When we are connected with genuine purpose, energy flows and exciting things can happen. Bring your full self to this moment. We invite lighthearted and spirited interaction. This is a great list. Oh. Listen from a place of genuine curiosity. Your ideas are gifts to the group, and they will challenge and improve them. Pay attention to what's trying to emerge. Invest more attention to areas of argument, and honor contradictory viewpoints. So,
Thank you very much.
sorry? Invest more attention in arguments, guys. It's going to be great. Invest more attention to areas. That's exactly the opposite of what you wrote. I'm sorry. Okay, well, that was me reading. So.
Thank you, Brittany. I appreciate that. Anything that we need to add to our expectations or guidelines? Okay, well, let's move forward here.
and I'll say this loudly. I just got an email from Kelly Bush, who's listening remotely. When people ask questions, they need to use the microphone because the questions aren't coming through.
Okay.
So I could say that again with the microphone.
So what Julie just reminded us for our friends in California, oh, excuse me, Jocelyn, just reminded us is that for our friends in California, that if you have a question or some feedback, please grab a mic so that they can hear you.
Exactly.
Thank you. Great.
How should we just hold it and okay, thanks, Antonio.
I was going to give a Phil Donahue reference, but I think Antonia is maybe a little too young to. All right. So the specific. Any questions about our objectives? Terrific. So some of the strategies that we'll be using then to glass wall here, you will see a lot of large notepads, and we're calling that our ideas gallery. And that is a place for you to inspire us with your best thinking, to challenge us with your toughest questions, and really it is a place for real-time feedback. Okay, so this is another way that you can interact with folks. That's a great way also for us to capture your thinking, and we'll be able to distill that information down and get it back to you. Okay? So please, please take advantage. We have some questions to provoke your thinking, and so spend some time in the hallway and use that idea gallery. Okay? Great. About those strategies. Okay. So I also would just like to facilitated conversations. So this is a very conversational approach that we'll be taking, that people want time to be able to network with their colleagues and work with their teams, particularly to refine action planning in real time based on what you're learning as we go. Most of you told us that you had very well-rounded membership with a strong desire to further expand your community partners on your teams, that teams have a great sense of the expertise that they have at the table, and they understand well the role of their teammates. Many of the teams have already experienced a lot of success in things like increasing sustainable operations, building interdisciplinary partnerships, and providing hands-on education to offenders. Communication in preparation for the workshop has been strong and well received, and that is really a nod to Tony back here, who has really done a spectacular job in setting us up, I think, to have a really successful workshop experience. Teams need evaluation tools. There was a lot of discussion last night at the poster session about that, and so we're going to have a panel discussion that Chuck, where are you, Chuck? That Chuck is going to both participate in, but also lead us through. Folks also want some ideas about funding ideas and strategies and examples of success stories, in addition to continued opportunities to gather together, all right? And that the biggest barrier to action planning so far has primarily been logistical in nature, that of time, coordination, clarity of team structure, and definitive leadership, okay? Any questions about the pre-workshop survey? All right. So, again, I just want to remind you that the overarching strategy that we're going to be using is very dynamic and conversational in nature, and we want you to be giving us your ideas and best thinking in real time, to use the ideas gallery, to certainly approach any of the workshop leadership, and let them know what you're thinking, and again, so that we can make nimble changes that respond to your needs as they arise. All right, now what I'm going to invite you to do is to please stand up. And I'm going to ask you to turn and face the table that you are nearest, so that the two tables are facing each other, the people. Make sense? Oh, sorry. So just like these folks are doing here. So turn the other way then. Oh. All right, now we're going to break one of the cardinal rules of any conference or workshop. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to please take out and turn on your cell phones. Okay, everybody have those? Great. So in your groups, here's what I would like you to do. I want you, we're going to do this very quickly. In your groups, I want you to demonstrate your primary ringtone to your group, and I want you to tell us what that says about you. Now, to be clear, not just your likes, but something about your personality. How is your ringtone somehow connected to who you are as a person? Okay? And I'm going to ask you to share as deeply as you're comfortable, and share things with your colleagues that they may not already know about you. California, we please invite you to do the same at this time. Okay, so we're going to do this really quickly. Make sense? Let's go.
Okay.
All right, just take one more minute to finish up if you haven't already. Is it warm in here?
Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Okay. You want to mute it?
All right, let's return to the work in front of us. I'm getting some feedback that some folks are a little warm in the room, and so we are responding to your real-time feedback. So let me just ask, and I'm not sure where the traveling mic is, but if you speak up, I will repeat. Any big surprises learned? I certainly noticed a trend across a lot of the groups, but tell me, what came up? Please.
We found out that we have exactly
On the speaker, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. We found out that we have exactly the same ringtone for exactly opposite reasons.
Oh. And
But
now we want to
that
know.
explains our partnership.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mine's because it's loud and different. And hers is because it's soft and.
Mine is because it's soft and doesn't disturb the group if it goes off on them.
Okay. Okay. What
But it's
else?
the same.
What else came up?
We had a lot of people that didn't have any clue how to even get to the ringtone.
Okay. That was certainly something that was happening across the groups, yes? What else? We had a lot of folks that their primary ringtone is a vibrate setting, right? Or that many people who have had their phones for years have never changed whatever the factory setting is. What is that telling us? Busy? Priorities. Yeah. This is a pretty focused group, okay? Well, great. That was just to get our juices flowing, kind of a fun way to begin to interact. So I'd like to move us forward in our time together, and I'm going to ask Paul Sheldon, Tommy Norris, Kathy Gukin, and Sarah Galgano to please come up. They didn't tell you? So I'm going to just briefly introduce each one of these folks to you and then have them take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about themselves and their work. So please, let's start with Paul. Paul is the senior advisor at plantingjustice.org and greenprisons.org. So let me turn some time over to Paul.
I sometimes describe myself as the American Correctional Association's pet greenie. I got adopted about 3 or 4 years ago by some retired corrections commissioners who were interested in implementing green practices in corrections institutions across the United States. And through our conversations, we began discussions about how would we write a standard and a policy for the American Correctional Association to use in auditing correctional facilities to identify sustainability-oriented practices and environmentally responsible practices in correctional institutions. And we had several priorities. First, we wanted to make sure that we protected public safety, staff safety, security, and affordability and feasibility. And so we were successful in doing that. The American Correctional Association has now adopted both a policy and a standard on environmentally responsible and sustainability-oriented practices, which Tommy and I will discuss in our breakout session this afternoon and share links on how to get that. And I've been engaged in sustainability now for over 40 years. For those of you in California, I helped to start the Tree People in Southern California, which is a very successful group that works to help people learn how to plant trees and take care of them in their neighborhoods. We originally thought we were going to end smog in Los Angeles. That was one of those great ideas that hasn't happened yet. And then in the 1980s, I helped to start the Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado, which is a think and do tank that works on natural resources policy. In early 2000, I helped to start Natural Capitalism Solutions, which is also in Colorado, where I still serve as a senior advisor. And then I taught on the graduate business school faculty at Presidio Graduate School in San Francisco, which was one of the first academic programs in business awarding an MBA in sustainable management. And then I continue to advise nonprofit and for-profit groups that are working to become more sustainable, including correctional institutions worldwide.
Thank you, Paul. Tommy?
Good morning. I come to this from a little bit different perspective, probably than at least most of you. I'm a correctional practitioner of now some 41 years. I retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 1999, taught academically at the undergraduate level for the first 10 years after that, was reasonably close to occupying myself chasing grandchildren, and then the same two guys that hornswoggled Paul called me up and asked if I would chair this new emerging committee and movement within the American Correctional Association, and I said, oh, sure, why not? And that has led to probably some of the most interesting work I've done in that 40 years. I really consider this movement and the focus on sustainability and corrections to parallel some of the certainly in our side of the profession, some of the most meaningful programmatic activities going back a long time. I date myself back to when we brought inmates in the institution and assigned them based on where the empty bed was or where we'd put Bubba last time or where their brother was or whatever. Yeah, I see a couple of you remember that. The whole emergence of objective classification, the professionalization of corrections, the impact that things like accreditation have had on the profession, with now over almost 70% of the correctional facilities and programs in the country accredited by ACA. This notion of creating the committee that I do still chair, along with Paul and some of these other folks, really we're starting to see the impact. So that's why I appreciated so much being given the opportunity to come out here and meet with you all and look at ways we continue to expand what you all are doing on the scientific side with what's happening in institutions. And like Paul, we'll chat a little bit more about specifics of that this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Kathy, if you please come up and tell us about your very interesting work.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, let's see, where to start. I went to Evergreen State College in the 70s. I started working in prisons in 1979 as a counselor and worked through the ranks, and very coincidentally was the superintendent of the same prison where Dan Pachoki was superintendent. Started corrections consulting after getting a lot of calls from agencies that were needing help with staffing costs, overtime control, and operating cost over a life cycle of a facility. And my forte really is in building financial models in Excel and looking at forecasting for correction systems. Why am I here? I have quietly been following this program since the original composting at Cedar Creek Correction Center, highly interested in the fact that a facility can reduce the amount of footprint, if you will, in many different areas simply by changing its practices. And at the time, Cedar Creek was looking at expanding, I think, over 100 inmates, and the county would not allow it to expand its sewage treatment system without a huge multi-million-dollar upgrade. And under Dan's leadership, they started taking all the kitchen waste, reduced that. This is probably a repeat for most of the people in the room. Anyway, all of a sudden, this green movement was going, and it's going, you know, like crazy now. So I am interested in seeing, being able to sell this program to other correctional agencies and furthering it through the financial end of it. And so I had been talking with Dan anyway over the last couple months about the cost and benefits of different aspects of the program and how the program can sell itself, because as people in corrections know, you're so overwhelmed with the day-to-day challenges of making your budget work, trying to create something new when you're really trying to keep the lid on the place. And this is so different than anything that's been going on in these agencies that I think there has to be a financial benefit and a lot of good reasons to do it in correctional agencies. So I think it's important to know what the full costs are and then what the financial benefits are that are on top of the better behavior and those sorts of things. So I've had some interlace with the Vera Institute that is doing a grant with 4 agencies around the country, one being Washington, on the cost-benefit analysis model so that it becomes an integral part of how Washington does business, and the sustainability program is the topic of study for that. So I'm really excited to be here. I thank whoever made it possible for me to be here, probably Dan and others, and I'm here to soak it all up and interested in talking with people that want to know more about how they might go about something like what I do.
Great, thank you. And finally, we have Sarah Galgano from the Vera Institute.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, for the fantastic segue into my introduction here. So, as Eric said, I work for the Vera Institute of Justice. We are an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that seeks to make the justice system fairer and more equitable for all parties involved. We have 9 centers. The center I work for is the Cost-Benefit Analysis Unit. And before I launch into what we do, I'm sure many of you have heard the word cost-benefit analysis tossed out there. But for those of you who may not be as familiar with the mechanics of it, I'll just give you a very brief, very, very brief overview. Cost-benefit analysis is a form of economic analysis. What kind of stands apart the hallmarks of CBA, what separates it from other forms of economic analysis are that A, you can examine your costs and benefits and look at them over a long time horizon. The other thing is because cost-benefit analysis can translate the impacts of a program into monetary value, you're able to directly compare the costs and benefits of programs that may have very, very different outcomes. For example, a program that lowers recidivism, it can be examined right alongside a program aimed to reduce substance abuse dependency. So what we do in the cost-benefit analysis unit is try to help both practitioners and decision makers alike, help provide them with information that allows them to weigh both the pros and cons of alternative investments. So in these times of scarce justice resource investments, they can make what they feel is the better decision. Now, cost-benefit analysis is not a crystal ball. It's not meant to be the sole determining factor of your decisions, but it's a great, what we have found in many of the jurisdictions we've worked with is that it is a great dialogue stimulator. It's also very helpful in examining how a policy, who a policy will impact and how those participants will be impacted. So I am here, again, I have to thank the Washington folks for bringing me along. We are, as part of our endeavor within the unit, we work on multiple projects. We work on research, publications, we staff the Cost-Benefit Knowledge Bank, which is funded by the BJA, and through the Knowledge Bank, we offer webinars, tutorials, online resources for other cost-benefit analyses out there. So if you're interested, please check it out, cbkb.org. We also help with technical assistance, such as we're doing with the State of Washington Department of Corrections. And our endeavors in Washington are to, A, help them identify a comprehensive list of benefits of correctional programming, such as the SPP programs, and develop ways to both quantify and monetize said benefits, as well as helping them develop a portfolio that can be used that aligns with their evidence-based programming already in place. So I apologize if I went on too long, but thank you guys very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you all to stay up here for just a few minutes. We actually have about 8 minutes. So we are so privileged to have these experts with us. What questions do you have for them? Please, Dan.
So this is kind of a question. I think I've shared it with a couple of people at different points along the way, but part of what SPP does is it also kind of codifies a model of construction, like constructability. If you were going to build a prison from scratch, if you were going to start over, and if you had all these people in the room and they were talking about their challenges around implementing these concepts, whether it's from a sheer cost-benefit standpoint of lowering the cost of incarceration, or if it's from a programmatic standpoint about how you have inmates engaged in activities that either reduce recidivism or encourage good behavior, or both, or are complementary to each other. I just wonder what it would take to get something out there that just challenged traditional construction as it exists today.
It's a great question, Dan. Thank you. In our session this afternoon, we're going to point a little bit at what the Federal Bureau of Prisons is doing, and they're actually taking that on. They're looking at having institutions under construction by 2030 that are zero net impact on the environment and positive impact on the people. So zero net energy, water going out cleaner than it came in, zero waste, and compassionate care throughout the cycle. And the two pieces that I think are most important are to recognize that you take a global systemic perspective, looking at the whole system, what is the place of prisons in the communities and in the areas that they are located, but also you can only do one thing at a time, so where do you start? And that's why Sustainability in Prisons Project is so important, because it has on the ground specific examples of what can we do first. And it differs by institution. There is, I think my favorite violent analogy is there's no silver bullet, there's silver buckshot. There just isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Every institution has appropriate opportunities, needs, resources, and you start where you can start, but then you keep track of the big picture. And I'm just going to step away from the microphone for a minute because I forgot to plug our product. Dan and Nalini and others advised on this guidebook for greening technologies, which was put out by the National Institute of Justice a couple of years ago. And it attempts to address that question of what's possible and where do you start, how do you get funding, what are some examples of what people are doing. So.
And Paul, are those available for folks?
Oh yes, there are piles of these on the back table. Thanks to Tommy and the good folks at Correctional Printing Industries in Indiana.
Yeah, the only other thing I think I would add to Paul's comments and you know, the fact that Washington particularly and some of the other agencies represented here are blessed with having some of the top-down support that it takes to make this kind of thing happen. As a 30-year veteran of the Bureau of Prisons, I will tell you that they didn't wake up one morning and decide it to be green. They, as a part of the Department of Justice, under the current administration, where everybody was given a target, everybody was given a goal, everybody's being asked to measure their progress, and because the BOP happens to be a highly competitive group, they felt like they had to outdo all the other agencies in government. So I think that's where some of that comes from. But I think it also goes to the point of the way I think you get this across, and the way I think it becomes inculcated in the culture, is you demonstrate the financial benefits of doing this. It really right now is about the buck. All the lofty ideas and programs we'd like to have that are intrinsically good in and of themselves, you've got to be able to demonstrate the financial advantages of changing the paradigm. And I was really pleased looking at some of the plans last night that there really are, you're including very measurable performance goals. And I'm going to tell you, I deal with administrators all over the country. That's the first question that comes out of their mouth. What's it going to cost me, and why should I do that? And Paul's comment about, you know, getting started and do what you do where you can do it, and moving towards that, you know, that larger goal, I think is really where we're at in this movement right now.
Just add something to that. Okay, and in my thinking, I think in terms of a model and in terms of the cost-benefit situation, an example might be designing a new prison. How much does it cost to design in a zero-waste sorting station, depending on what size the prison is? Is it 500 beds, 1,000 beds? How many staff are there? Because the staff go into the equation. And what is the payback period for that over time? How does it reduce the tipping fees? That sort of thing. Take all those costs, capital, and stretch them over the period of public debt if you're using bonds or the financing, and what is the payback period? And I think that example alone will sell itself.
Hold just 1 second to get microphone.
I just want to add a tiny bit down to this, that the AIA is developing a Leads for Justice buildings.
Please identify yourself.
Oh, Adrienne Ferry, LA County Sheriff's. The AIA is developing a LEED certification just for justice systems, because the unique thing about justice and correctional facilities is you have a whole lot of people, you call it human capital, that can actually be incorporated into making buildings greener, right? Like recycling, like gray water systems and stuff like that. So you have windows, heating system, blah, 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 all kinds of things based from human capital that aren't included in regular LEEDs designs. So hopefully someday that will be on the plate too. But there is an actual form of things that you can do. It's online, stuff that you can consider. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Adrienne. Nalini? And I just want to mention before we pass the mic to Nalini, and then we'll wrap up after Nalini's point, is that you should know that Adrienne has expertise and a background in architecture. So if you're particularly interested in these issues, she would be a great person to connect with. Please, Nalini.
Yeah, just a comment that Dan and I and Carrie have talked about in the past, and that is sort of lifting ourselves up from just our group or people working in prisons. This idea of truly understanding sustainability from the standpoint of the bricks and mortar, as well as the human capital, as well as attitudes, is that I think the work that we do here, if we're mindful of it, could be useful for people who are designing other institutions. And I think prisons are uniquely suited because it's possible to measure what energy is going in, what materials are going in, how are they being used, and what comes out the other end. And there's also the potential for modifying behavior to some extent. For instance, the plate scraping at Cedar Creek at the very beginning that ended up improving water quality. So I think this work as a whole could really contribute to our knowledge of how to better design buildings and human capital and human activities in built environments. That is another contribution from this project.
Thank you. Please help me thank our experts, and we'll be hearing from them more throughout our time together. Thank you. Okay.